Life as a medieval peasant was filled with suffering. From the moment they were born, they were bound to a life of hardship, forced to work the land, struggling to survive on little food, and living under the constant threat of war, famine, and disease. They had no freedom, no real rights, and no hope of ever escaping their status. Whether they toiled in the fields, served in a lord's household, or performed backbreaking labor, their efforts were never enough to lift them from poverty. Most peasants lived and died without ever knowing comfort or security. But just how difficult was life for them? In this video, we'll uncover 7 of the harshest struggles medieval peasants faced every single day. And by the end, you'll realize that the Middle Ages were far more brutal than most people think. Let's begin. Chapter 1, Backbreaking Work from Dawn to Dusk. A medieval peasant's life revolved around one thing: work. From the earliest hours of the morning until sunset, peasants were expected to perform hard physical labor every single day, with no exceptions. The vast majority of peasants were farmers, meaning they spent their days plowing fields, planting crops, harvesting grain, and tending to livestock. But they didn't work for themselves. Most of the land belonged to a lord, and nearly everything they produced was taken as rent or taxes. Even beyond farming, there was no shortage of exhausting tasks. Women and children fetched water, gathered firewood, spun wool, and prepared food. Men repaired buildings, built fences, and slaughtered animals. During harvest season, everyone, regardless of age, was expected to work from sunrise to sunset, and sometimes even longer. There was no such thing as a break. No weekends, no vacations. Even Sundays, which were reserved for church, required hours of religious service and additional labor. And what did peasants receive in return for their hard work? A life of constant struggle, with little chance of improvement. Chapter 2, Extreme Poverty and Heavy Taxes. Most peasants lived in deep poverty. Even though they worked tirelessly, they saw very little reward. A large portion of their food and earnings were taken by lords, the monarchy, and the church. Lords demanded high rents in the form of crops, livestock, or labor. Kings imposed harsh taxes that had to be paid in coin, a problem for peasants who rarely had money. Even the church expected tithes, requiring peasants to give up 10% of everything they had. Refusing to pay wasn't an option. Failure to meet their obligations meant severe punishment, including fines, imprisonment, or eviction from their land. For many peasants, there was never enough left over. A single bad harvest or an unexpected expense, like a sick child, could push an entire family into starvation. The system was designed to keep peasants trapped in poverty, working endlessly just to survive another day. Chapter 3, Horrible Living Conditions. Their homes were small, cramped, and built from whatever materials were available, usually mud, straw, and wood. Most houses were one-room structures with dirt floors, no windows, and no chimneys. When fires were lit for warmth, smoke filled the room, making breathing difficult. There was no plumbing, no sanitation, and no separation between humans and animals. Livestock often lived inside the home to provide warmth during the winter. Because their houses were so poorly built, they were cold in the winter, unbearably hot in the summer, and constantly damp. Diseases thrived in these conditions, making life even harder for those who were already weak from malnutrition. Chapter 4, Disease and No Medicine. Peasants had no access to real medicine. When they fell sick or were injured, they relied on folk remedies, religious prayers, and sometimes harmful treatments like bloodletting. The idea of sanitation didn't exist, and simple infections could become deadly. The worst disease of all was the Black Death. In the 14th century, this devastating plague wiped out nearly half of Europe's population. Entire villages were abandoned, and those who fell ill often died within days. Without knowledge of germs or bacteria, people believed the plague was caused by curses, bad air, or divine punishment. Some even turned to extreme religious rituals, hoping for divine protection. But nothing worked. If you lived in the Middle Ages, disease wasn't just a possibility, it was an inevitability. Chapter 5, Famine and Starvation. Food was never guaranteed for medieval peasants. A single bad harvest, unexpected frost, or prolonged drought could wipe out an entire village's food supply. When this happened, famine took hold, and starvation became a daily reality. With no food storage systems and no government assistance, peasants had to survive by any means necessary. Some resorted to eating grass, tree bark, or even animals not normally considered food. Others risked stealing from their lord's land, a crime that could result in execution. For peasants, hunger was a constant battle that few ever truly won. Chapter 6, No Freedom. Born a peasant, die a peasant, there was no way out. If you were born a peasant, you stayed a peasant. Most peasants were serfs, meaning they were legally bound to the land they worked on. They couldn't leave without permission, couldn't own property, and had no real rights. Even if they worked harder than everyone else, there was no path to advancement. A peasant's fate was decided at birth, and nothing could change it. Chapter 7, Constant wars and invasions. Kings, nobles, and invaders fought for power, and peasants were always caught in the middle. When armies passed through villages, they stole food, destroyed homes, and killed anyone who resisted. Even worse, many peasants were forced into battle with no training and no real weapons. Their chances of survival were slim. For peasants, war wasn't just a distant event, it was an inescapable nightmare. These were just some of the struggles that made medieval peasant life unbearable. Could you have survived in their world? Let us know in the comments.